extremely late in this, but Gail Sherman, a former clerk for the town of Foster, passed away in November. Her husband passed away in August, and she passed away in November. So if you could have a moment of silence for Gail. Thank you. Yeah. This glove was out on the street. I don't know if anybody's missing a glove. It was outside of a truck.
Walter.
Walter, there you go.
Nice gloves, Walter.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I got chewed out
Okay. I see nothing under public comment, and I will move on to consent agenda.
I make a motion, we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on, public hearing. There was some questions I had. I spoke to Joanna, I spoke to Mrs. Dillon regarding that. Is Thomas Reeves, is it? Hi, Thomas, how are you? Thank you for coming, Mr. Reeves. On your application, it says 72B Old Danielson Pike.
Yes,
I believe the address is 52.
that's actually, the address is exactly 52, but it's like the actual address right behind it. It's in the same building. There's like
But,
two
so
different mailing
it's
addresses.
on Old Danielson?
Yes.
Okay. Because, okay.
So my understanding is that there is no 72B Old Danielson Pike, but I checked with the town planner, that was not an address with the town.
That was my concern, is that when I went looking for 72B, because I had heard from Adam, and then I was like, oh, sounds like there's competition, and I couldn't find 72B Old Danielson.
It's 52.
It's 52 on the application. On the application, it says 72B Old Danielson. So that's
And
where my concern.
Denise, when
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was doing my permit for Old Man Mercantile, 72B was one of the mailing addresses that I had to mail to. So, and I know that does come up under Foster Barons. I don't know how I found it, but if it's not there anymore, I don't know. But it's in it's under the property history if you look on
When I went
Foster
to town
Barons.
hall, that's, you know, they didn't object to that, so.
I don't know. I mean,
I'm gonna look it up on DGSI right now.
Thank you.
And then-
Yeah. But when Joanne checked with the planner, there is no 72B Old Danielson in Foster, so Heidi's looking it up.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find it on
Yeah.
DGSI.
That's a mailing address,
Well, we need,
not
we need to know what zone
business location.
there's manufacturing, so you need
Yeah.
to make sure that
72B.
Yes.
it's gotta be
Old
in
Danielson.
old,
Pike.
like.
But I can do it by owner too. Henry Chavez is the
That's
owner.
not
No,
Heidi's
Danielson
doing
Pike
it.
Realty.
So we can just double check.
There's another issue. Another issue.
Yeah, right there, I see that. It comes up as 52. But it does come up as 52 under Danielson Pike Realty. It says location 52.
If we could have everyone be quiet so
But
we
if you,
can all hear
if
what.
you come down here, it does say 72B Old Danielson Pike.
No, that is
The
for the
owner.
that Danielson
Right.
Pike Realty is located,
Right.
but, so that doesn't necessarily mean that we have flat lot, that means that that's for the old Danielson, that's what
That's
that.
a different address.
Well, that's just what that company listed as their principal place of business, but it doesn't solidify that we actually have this lot.
I'm sorry.
Because we can't figure out what zone
I
this
figured it was okay
lot
because
is
town
in.
hall said that was the address.
Right, and I understand that too.
And under here, on here, it doesn't say what the.
That's the owner of 52.
Right, I'm just wondering if it says what the uses on
That was right, so 52 zone, yeah, but what is 72 zone? I don't know.
That's what I'm wondering.
Adam, what is this business in your building?
Okay. It's
This
a
is
gun-
Adam Dacko.
Yep, Adam Dacko, 119A Central Pike. That physical building has 2 addresses. It always has. I even have utility bills coming under 72B Danielson, Old Danielson Pike. I'm still receiving them right to this day. It's always been a gunsmith in the back, Kurt Dinas, when he was working under Kurt's Machine Shop. And then he unfortunately passed away in 2011. Then we took on Jim Connors. And he worked under 72B, but that was only for approximately 1 year. And then he moved on. And then that address, other than utility bills going to it, was basically sitting stagnant. And so the reason why I wanted, it was my suggestion, because you're gonna be running 2 separate businesses out of that same location. I know I will be receiving packages for him, and Tom will be receiving packages for me. I wanted that to be clear as rain, that under ATF rules, I am not accepting, per se, into my books, his product.
That was gonna be one of my questions.
That
Thank
was
you.
the purpose of the 2 different addresses.
Before we go further, should we open it or not open it?
I mean, I think that the main issue is that the application does not, so aside from the address, the application is not in compliance with our town ordinance. So an application that follows our town ordinance is going to need to be completed before there can be a hearing.
With 52 Danielson Pike on it?
I don't know, they'll have to, I mean, somebody will have to figure out what the actual address is. Because 72 Old Danielson Pike, when I spoke to the planner, was a residence. So I think they'll have to figure out, A, what the correct address is, but B, the town ordinance for a firearm dealer's license is pretty comprehensive. There needs to be, the chief of police needs to do a background check and also needs to write a recommendation. The applicant needs to submit something proving that they have the federal and or state licenses. The applicant also needs to submit something concerning, and I do have a copy of the ordinance, concerning prior arrests and things of that nature.
That's supposedly been done already, we paid for all that.
There is a background check.
The chief of police is supposed to do, what I was provided was not, I saw an application, this was the application. It was not notarized, there was nothing concerning the statement of arrest. There was no recommendation from the chief of police who was supposed to do an investigation, and there was no copy of the federal firearm license.
And I did
So in
speak-
order to grant the license under our ordinance, you need to have a federal license.
I did,
Yeah, here's the, we have the license in Chittison.
that's
Adam's
Adam's license.
He won't get a license. This guy, he can't get a license until he fills out all his paperwork with the town. That's how Adam,
Yeah,
got his.
until I get the town business license, I can't get the.
I sent him a copy of the ordinance so that everyone could have it.
I have a copy printed.
I did speak to the chief because I wanted to know if he was going to be coming tonight to speak about this. And he said he was, and I asked if he had what was his concerns, if he had any, or he was not aware of it. So, I don't know.
He did a background check. It's in the folder.
Okay, well, when I spoke to him today at 3:30, he didn't know anything about
Well,
it.
he definitely did it.
Okay,
And I have it.
thank you.
And then,
So.
And I hope you understand, in this day and age, we want to make sure,
Oh, absolutely, absolutely,
especially when it comes with guns, and
absolutely.
so that's our only concern. Thanks, because when I spoke to the chief, he was like, oh.
How long ago was that? Yeah, well, Nancy,
No,
I
it
think
was
that's
done
right.
last day of the Right. Yeah. Do you want to say, you did sign it.
It's a background check, but it's not.
So, Joanna,
But the ordinance says you can't issue a license unless it's a federal license. That's what it says. There's no person, no license shall be issued under this article to any person who does not have the requisite federal and state license for dealers and firearms.
I make a motion, we table this until we straighten it out.
Wait 1 second. Please, let's.
He spent a lot of money to have this tonight. He's, with a gun shop license, it's 3 weeks of advertising. He spent about $500 to do this tonight.
Open it and continue.
He was hoping to do the same thing that Adam did. If you recall, a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, Adam applied for the town gun shop license so that he could have that. He had it for a whole year and never did any business because he was trying to get his federal firearms license. So he was trying to do the same thing. So it would be the town council granting him a license that won't even be used until after all, however long it takes for the federal firearm license to go through. Similar to what Adam had done.
I understand, thank you, sir.
Could I
Yes.
suggest something? Possibly at least opening up the public hearing and continuing it, and that way, don't issue anything, but it's continuing. He doesn't have to pay for all the,
I think we could probably just continue the public hearing so
Correct.
the application could be,
that's,
That's what he's saying.
I
Well-
think you can just continue it rather than having.
well, that's what I mean, continue the public
it, so
hearing.
You don't have to re-advertise.
Right. Don't table it, open it and
So you don't
continue.
have to re-advertise, but
Joanna, what does this mean, number two of two? It says there's 2 buildings on this property. And are there 2 buildings with 2 separate addresses?
No, it says that there's a separate address. I think that there's one, four, or 3 desks.
And
Denise?
why we're, 1 second, Mr. Neves,
Yes, yes.
Mr. Neves. I just have one other question.
Yes,
For clarification. It says light part manufacturing,
Parts manufacturing, yes.
light parts manufacturing. Okay, so you are gonna be doing manufacturing?
Yes.
And what will that look like?
What do you mean?
Manufacturing, when I think of
Just,
manufacturing, I think of.
Well, no, just for repairs of firearms, if I have to make a part, then, millwork,
So-
yes.
Okay.
Not Machine
For the
work,
guns.
machine work.
For the guns.
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, not on a large scale, just very small scale stuff.
Yeah, and well, when you said light, I
Yeah,
kind of
okay.
assumed that, but I wanted to make sure that it's correctly zoned.
Okay.
That was my concern. Oh, I'm sorry, Lisa, I raised your hand, go ahead.
I realize there's a technicality with the property addresses. This particular piece of property is in a peculiar situation where there are 2 sides, 2 roads that it borders on. So if there is an address and not the physical, can it just be the mailing address at that physical location, 52B? Does it have to be a whole new
It
application?
says
Can you-
72B. I'm looking on here.
72B is on this side of the building.
72 is the
52B
residence.
52 is on this
Yeah,
side.
no, I know, I'm familiar with it because
There's separate
Connie
doors.
Pulowski is 72, Old Danielson Pike, and that's why when I said, oh,
So it's, I don't understand what the conundrum is, that if it's a mailing address that corresponds to a physical address. I mean, I used to be a realtor for a long time. A lot of times you have a mailing address that doesn't correspond with the property address.
I
Because
understand
the way
that.
the driveway comes off a road.
I understand that too, but I just want to make sure that we do it the correct way.
There are also separate entrances and exits for both
Yes.
locations.
I'm familiar with the building, so thank you. Where do we stand at this point?
So this apparently is. I don't know what, this is like from PCI. But the chief is supposed to make a recommendation, not just a backup check. He's supposed to make a recommendation on whether or not to translate. But I think the bigger issue is that your staff, your ordinance says that you have to have the federal license first. I mean, no, if I saw this in advance, I probably would have spoke to the applicant, but obviously, I get the packet from you, you get it. So, this is what your ordinance says, so I don't know what,
And I know what Mrs. Sprague was referring to is that we did give Adam in the past a license contingent upon
Right.
his going through the FF.
FFL.
thank you. So maybe you might want to, but I mean, this is what it says, so I,
If we continue this public hearing to our January 23rd meeting, that way we can get the chief what he needs to do. We can figure out the correct address portion of it, and we can review our ordinance and see that, and we can,
Because I'm not gonna have the FFL by then, I mean, they
Right,
won't,
no.
they won't even grant it unless I have the physical address. you
okay,
know?
so that's where we are now, and
Okay.
I apologize for,
So what
You
is,
coming
does
out.
he need to revise this application and just put 52? Because it's weird, on the assessor's database, we have 52 Danielson Pike with a mailing address of 72B Danielson Pike. But if you go in and you search 72B, it comes up with nothing.
because the mailing address that's listed is for that Danielson Pike Realty, so that's
Right.
just what they put as their mailing address, but we don't have, like Foster doesn't have it on the books, so
Right.
maybe the postman delivers something, but it's not a
But
real.
that's my question, so what does he need
So
to do,
then-
change it to 52?
Whatever the
Well,
real address
then-
of the building is, and I mean, you could put 52 rear building or rear, something along those lines, but,
It physically has to be separate from his, because
Right.
because the ATF will not grant two licenses for one address.
but I think the issue is 72B is not an actual address in the town of Foster. So,
Why did town hall have it listed, and she showed it, it's like 72B.
It's a mailing address, it does show up on here as a mailing,
Okay.
but as the physical place of the property, it
But
shows
is it-
52.
it shows up as a mailing, not because it's a legitimate mailing, but it's just because somebody filled that in as their mailing address.
Right.
So just because it shows up,
Right, I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
what can we do to
Right.
help him to correct this? So what do you do, like 52, we have clear?
right, what's Adams?
One lot plot, one tax bill.
Okay, my address is the front entrance, 52 Danielson Pike.
Then,
There are,
So
there
can
are
you
two
put 52
exits.
rear? Is that good enough for the,
because the entrance is on Old Danielson Pike.
I think you have to go through the police for that too,
Right.
because when
It's a
we
nine-
did my
it's a
properties, we had
911.
to, exactly.
Right, so you have to check with, so we've got, and a lot of questions have come up
Continuing.
since we've reviewed this. If we continue the public hearing to the 23rd, we can attempt to get all this straightened out.
And I won't have to re-advertise and all.
You do not have to, no.
But you'll have to amend the application
Right.
to,
Right.
with the address of 52 rear, and talk to
that would be
You'd have to check with, I would think,
AOB.
police.
and
Police.
Would that be good enough?
AOB. Can't have 52A, which is Adam, and 52B,
I
which
may.
would be this gentleman.
I may.
She's there.
no, because
I mean,
She's A.
like, they,
Oh, you're same address? Oh, you're raising B, okay, C.
no, he's,
I'm assuming it has to be an actual
Right, I think they're gonna want
I'm assuming it
address.
has to be a real address for the
Yeah.
actual
Yeah.
federal license.
yeah,
Yeah, they're gonna want, so getting it straightened out now will probably help with that.
Right.
Mr. Dacko?
Okay, my next question is, this is gonna be on Tom's end. Because of the address change, will that affect how long it will take Tom to get the FFL? Because now, he submitted his paperwork under 72B.
That's not our determination.
I know that, but that's just another pothole in the road.
I mean,
Right.
but I think when the feds go and check to see if that's a legitimate address,
Yeah,
before you
they're
come back
gonna
and it's not,
reject
well,
Yeah,
that,
I'm gonna get rejected for
You're
the
gonna get
license,
rejected.
because the town of Foster said that that's an actual address.
Well,
Can you amend that with them?
No, I have to read it out, when it gets rejected, I'm gonna have to resubmit it.
And they're gonna make you wait.
Oh, yeah.
I think what the problem is, I own a piece of property that has multiple mailing addresses on it on Whipple Terrace. The town only has one tax bill, one plat, one lot for that. Just like and again, he has to apply for that address through the town. So there is only one address as the town sees it for tax purposes, and that's the dilemma they have. You can't create a second license because it's the same license for the same property. The FFL doesn't allow two FLs under two different names
Right.
under the same property. So the
Right.
quagmire is, it's still one piece of property. Mailing address is,
So same plat and lot, they won't allow a second one?
I don't know.
Like what happened if you had a big strip mall with two different ones on different sides?
Could you? See, in that case,
Mr.
each one is
Dacko.
separate, it's the same address, but it's like A, B, C, D.
I see you, Mr. Savazio. Mr. Dacko is first, thank you.
Okay. You can have 6 different FFLs under one roof at one given time. Again, I wanted separate addresses for separate books.
And I understand that. It's 2 separate businesses.
Correct.
It's 2 separate businesses, so you should have it separate so that it's clear.
That was the intention.
Right.
So you're 52.
I'm
I
52.
know Mr. Savazio.
He's
Wait a second.
72B.
Lisa's 52A.
Yeah, you can.
Your business, Lisa, is 52A.
But they don't, they don't,
52A.
they don't,
Mr. Savazio,
they don't
one second.
They're
deliver
just gonna
on
continue it, hammer
Route
it out.
6. They only deliver on the other side of the building. So the town, technically, I put a mailbox out there, but I don't get mail in it because he won't deliver to that side of the road. So he delivers to 72B. So it's kind of almost like a condo, commercial condo situation where you have a physical address of the property that, like Gordon said, is being taxed on, and then you've got individual addresses for that. That
Is it going by poll numbers over there on?
It's how, yeah, I assume,
Probably.
it's just how the town of Forest does it, but, it's kind of splitting hairs to say, to do it all over again, because the mailman is only gonna deliver to on that side anyway, so to say 72B doesn't exist, it does exist.
But I'm not sure the mailman is the one that.
52.
I understand, but I'm not sure the mailman is the one who's gonna determine all this. Mr. Savazio,
One thing,
yes.
you're not gonna solve this. You have an attorney who needs to do research, obviously. The second thing is, there is no 52A. If you go back in the records of the bait shop, when the bait shop was ended, there's an agreement between Mr. Shabbat and the town of Foster, a legal agreement in the zoning that the bait shop was to be moved to Wydella's property or torn down. So this business, A, is illegal. So now I'm informing you that the attorney knows about it. On Monday, I'll go look it up and hand it to your zoning official. There is no legal 52A because there's an agreement between the town. When the bait shop was left, when his son left the bait shop, it had to be removed and moved to Alan Wydella's or torn down. So thank you. Yes, look back.
Okay,
We had a
it's
public-
legal now.
Go to your attorney and
Thank
get
you,
this
it's
over.
legal now.
No, it's legal now.
I'm sorry. What we're going to do is I'm going to accept a motion to continue this public hearing to January 23rd at 7 o'clock, right here in this building. And then we will go from there. Hopefully we'll have everything straightened out by then.
Okay, thank you.
So could I have a motion to continue this
I
public
think
hearing?
Chris already made the motion, I'll
You
second.
did?
No, I
Thank you.
didn't, no, I said
That
table.
stopped. Oh, table, okay.
I said table.
And
I'll
nobody
change
seconded.
that to continue to January 23rd.
I'll second it.
23rd?
Yes. And it's been seconded. Any further discussion from the council? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I'm sorry for all this confusion. Moving on to the Charter Review Committee draft for suggested changes to the town charter. Mr. Restivo is here, you were the chair. You all spent a lot of time and effort on this, I appreciate that. Would you like to say anything to the council?
Sure. Do you want me to summarize the changes that we put forward for proposal?
Yeah, we have it, but hearing it from you might be a little, yeah, and I think everyone else would want to hear it too.
And just so you know, we already opened the charter review committee meeting as well.
Oh, good.
Between the four of us, so.
Good.
So there's 10 changes that we put forward. It's our understanding that the Economic Advisory Committee might want to meet with us for an additional change, so it's the council's pleasure. I think most, if not all of us, would be fully willing to volunteer to hear that and see if there's an 11 change.
Good, thank you. I was going to bring that up since Mr. Paulo is here, I know.
So the first change was just, there were, typos, dates, provisions, like transition provisions that are no longer applicable. Those were cleaned up and taken out. The second change that we put forward is to provide for 4-year terms for town council members. Elections would be held every 2 years. So 3 members would be elected during the regular general election, and 2 members would be elected during off-election years. So individual council members would serve for 4 years. 3 would get elected during presidential election years, and then 2 would get elected on the off years.
Like the school committee is doing now, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yep. that was
When I read off years, I was thinking the following year, I'm thinking that's going to cost us money. So, okay,
Yep.
thank you.
We also provided for 4-year terms for the town clerk. We removed the position of sealer of weights and measures. Our understanding is that the state now does that. It's no longer a town appointed position. We created the position of town manager. It would be a 5-year term appointed by the council pursuant to an employment contract. There's a number of responsibilities that were set forth in the charter, but the idea is that there's some flexibility in the council's discretion to determine the town manager's responsibilities. We did put forward, again, it was put forward at the last charter review committee, it was the only change that didn't pass, increase the amount that goes towards capital from 2% to 4%. We did try to word it a little differently to hopefully clarify that concept, so it's not an increase in taxes, it's just an increase in the percentage of the taxes that we all already pay going towards capital as opposed to operations. We changed the name of town treasurer to finance director, just in recognition of the different responsibilities that that role has taken on. We provided for nonpartisan municipal elections. There's about 9 communities in the state that do this currently, and it would just be, rather than Ds and Rs, or I guess Gs if anyone from the Green Party tries to run, it would just be nonpartisan elections. We revised the purchasing language so that our bidding and purchasing requirements are just controlled by state law. It looked like there was an attempt to do this at the last change, but the wording just got a little confusing. So this is, state laws would govern, there's no additional layer of protections on top of that. And then we provided for recall of elected officials. There's an extensive process set forward for that, but we thought it balanced against the 4-year terms that we were creating for the council and the clerk to include a recall provision. So happy to go into any more detail on any of those, but those are the changes.
And you can add to that, John, like the EDAC has something they want to bring forward to you?
Yeah, so we'll certainly hear what that is.
Now, what is the term of the Charter Review Commission now? Are they done, or are they still?
They were
Yeah, I
done.
thought as
Yes,
of
they,
December
right,
1st.
right, they
Okay.
were done. So that was one of the things that we needed to discuss tonight, because I know Mr. DiPaolo was here and he spoke to me in regards to meeting,
Yes.
I guess, with the planning board and the charter review to come up with something. So I guess we would need to extend the charter review, if that's what the pleasure of the council is.
How much
And-
more time do you think you need?
Well, we don't really know what the proposal is. Maybe if they wanted to share that, it might help gauge. I think we've been kind of guessing as to what would require a charter change to begin with.
And the charter review goes to when now? Is it March? I know we extended the charter review.
No, the
The
charter review
EDAC.
was into-
I mean, I'm sorry, the
Yeah.
EDAC. The EDAC.
We went to,
April 1st.
April 1st.
Oh, okay.
so, right,
So,
and the
I'll make a
planning board is
motion,
ongoing.
I'll make a motion to extend the term of the Charter Review Commission to April 1st to allow them time to meet with the EDAC.
Second.
Discussion.
Do they want to be on this?
They did a lot of work.
They did,
Shall I-
yes,
I know.
Can I have time to talk to my manager to see, my agent, to see if I can extend that contract? John, whatever.
Kathleen,
I just had a question about the process. So when do you all get together to discuss this so that we can give you some of the background possibly, if you would consider as to why we're making different proposals? In other words, you hear we're proposing a town manager, but there's a lot more sort of behind that in different ways it can look, so that it's not adding a full-time position necessarily.
right, we can discuss it further. I think maybe if we wait until the EDC
Okay.
is done, and then we can discuss that further. But ultimately, it goes to the people. And I think the biggest thing, the last time was, especially I remember the capital going from 2 to 4%, is that people were not informed.
Right.
Do you decide which ones go forward, or do they all, that's
We-
what I mean, is as you
We
are
can decide,
constantly-
we added, last time we added something, I forgot, the last time the charter review, it was under Mr. Lewis's, council, and we added something.
think it was a-
Capital,
The capital,
4%
we added
cap.
it, okay. I knew we added something, so we, as a council, can add something.
Okay.
We can also look at this and say, yes or no. Generally, we put it forward. I mean, I haven't seen where a charter review or council has said, no, we're not gonna put that one forward. Mr. Boyden?
Sue marked me as president of the meeting. I'm sorry I came in a couple minutes late. I just want to make a couple of comments. The first one is, I had excuse me, it was a great pleasure to serve on this committee. These folks were thoughtful, respectful, civil, and very careful about what we put forward. I don't agree with everything that we put forward, but it was well done. And just on specifics, I wanted to add one thing that I think is very important to note. The nonpartisan election recommendation, which initially I didn't support, but in thinking about it, I do, and here's why. And it mentions it on the summary that John wrote up, is that it provides for a primary. So it whittles the number of candidates down to twice what can be on the final ballot in the general election. And I think that's a good thing. We've had, as you probably all know, we've had elections where we've had 15, 17, however many people running. And that doesn't give the voters a very clear choice. It's the same kind of thing that, when we had 3 people run for governor, right? And somebody gets elected without a majority. So that, in this environment with the, top vote getters filling the seats, that kind of narrows that down. I think it's a great thing. And why is it every time I come to this meeting, I get roped into another committee? Well, it's not another committee.
No.
I'll be happy to continue. Thank you.
But I agree. They put a lot of time and effort. Right, right. So the motion has been made to extend it. Many of you are here,
It's been a pleasure. I would be happy to sit with these people again.
so,
Second.
Me too. We're in.
so that gives you a quorum, I believe, right? It's 5, so.
And John say yes.
I'd like to project something that came from the meetings, something we struggled with. I went in with an idea, I went in with some thoughts, and had my mind changed twice, back and forth. The land trust. We addressed the land trust issue. We took it very seriously. We belabored it countless meetings, going back and forth and revisiting it. We heard from townspeople, we heard from the land trust folks. They came to the meeting and spoke. I for one, got a huge education. They really were thoughtful, dedicated, loyal, committed, and it changed my view. But one thing that came from that, although it didn't make it to our recommendation, was I think collectively we agreed that the council should extend an invitation, put it on an agenda to sit with them and discuss prospects of, they were willing to work with the funds, I think, is one of my takeaways. They were willing to visit the funds, because I think one area that I, for one, was enlightened was the fact that they may be able to pay for some of the ball field work and some of the maintenance that they haven't done. And I think they're open to that. I don't think they were not open to what they thought was an attack on the funds, but they were open to a collaboration to work with the town. And I think it would behoove you guys to actually sit with them and meet and talk about how to go forward with those funds and maybe come to an agreement. I think they're receptive. I think it should be visited.
Thank you. Anyone else from the Charter Review Committee that would like to say? Mr. DiPaolo, would you like to say anything in?
Thank you for that. We'd also like to meet with the planning board, and we'd like to do that as soon as possible. I don't want to speak, the chair of our board is here, Mr. Moreau is here, he's our chair, I don't want to speak over him.
Well, I only reference you because
Yeah.
you called me, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Okay.
It's not a problem. We definitely want to meet, and we've spoken about this in the past. We wanted to meet with as many of the town committees as possible so that we can put together a proper plan for the town. Something that provides the town with some sort of economic development without affecting, the ruralness of the town. We'd like to meet with all the committees.
We had talked about doing that and including the council in that, perhaps a workshop rather than a meeting, which gives us a little bit more leeway, if you will.
We have specific ideas that we want to present to the planning
So-
board and the charter commission
Would you prefer it to meet with?
as soon
Yes.
as possible.
But the Economic Development Planning Board and the Charter Review, and then meet with the council?
That
Or,
would be fine.
and then,
Yeah.
and then have a workshop?
Yes.
So have a workshop sometime the end of March?
That would be great.
Would that work? Mr. Renzi?
Well,
I'm sorry.
yeah, I'm fine with whatever.
Okay.
Do all three committees need to meet together? We need to go rent a cafeteria or something? Or just, how do you want to do that?
I'll leave that to you guys to decide.
Fine with me.
I mean, no, we need everybody in the committee, or just to get it out there as a workshop, or how do you want to do that?
A workshop would be an interesting way to go with this. Maybe present some of our ideas, and then we can hash them all out that way.
And then give them, you be there, John?
Well, I think-
Or give whatever ideas they have together first, then give them to you, how do you want to do it? Or all at one time?
Could we have that discussion so we can move forward?
You just asked me a question.
I'm asking if you would
Yeah,
agree,
well,
thank
John,
you.
I'll get to you. I'll have to check with her before it goes.
Thank you,
Let my guys know.
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you so much. Do we need to, yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Sabathia.
history's a funny thing. The land trust, the state didn't reimburse the town 2 years in a row and decided to give the town the transference tax in lieu of, or as in replacement of not giving us reimbursements. That night, Mr. Gorham and Mr. Boyden came forward with a proposal to create a land trust with money that was supposed to go into the general fund. The land trust at this time, we are in such a shortfall of monies at this time. I'm not going to speak for the Economic Development Committee, but at some point, the council should end, or put forth a proposal to disband the land trust. They take money that was supposed to go to the citizens, take land off the tax rolls, which adds to the tax burdens of the citizens. And they've made their purpose now taking off land in the town of Foster that's usable for housing or economic development. So at some point, some council has going to take recommendations from their treasurer and take back the money into the general fund where it was supposed to go in the first place. Continuing to take, I know, you wanted me to shut up, but
I'm just
continuing
gonna say,
to
it's
take.
really not on the agenda, it's not part of the
Well,
charter
but you
review.
opened the door with him.
It's not part of the charter
Well,
review.
you opened the door with Mr. Renzi and the
How
planning
did I
board
open the door with Mr. Renzi?
talking about the land trust.
Mr. Renzi did not speak about the land trust. Mr. Renzi was talking about
All right.
being the planning board
All right,
chair
well,
and whether they can all meet.
So maybe someday a council is going to do a good job. Thank you.
Good, thank you. We appreciate your consideration.
You're welcome.
All right, so moving on then.
You don't need a motion.
We don't need a motion for that. We have it, and we will meet again. The zoning board appointment. Oh, we did not. We did, we done that, thank you. I asked for the council. So we have a motion to extend the charter review committee to April 1st. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No, I think that's, thank you. Moving on to the zoning board. Ms. Inkpen, is she here today? How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Last time we had her request to be on the zoning board, no one from the council had been able to speak to her. I did get to speak to her the very next day. And I also know that she met with our planner. So, she is here tonight if anybody would have any questions for her, or you would like to say anything at this point.
Just wanted to say hello. We moved here a year ago and we really love Foster. And I was looking through the different boards that were available and I saw there was an opening and wanted to help.
Yes, and
Yeah.
Jennifer did send an email that does state that she met with you and that, if you don't mind, I'll just read it. It says she's very smart, nice, and has already read through the town charter, which will be changing.
I know, I was like, oh, you're getting rid of the really cool title. I was hoping to have like a scale or something. That's awesome.
You go into the quarter board.
Perfect.
Jennifer explained how the zoning board meets and makes decisions regarding special use permits and variances. You took notes and asked for a copy of the zoning code, which she emailed to you.
I did print out all of the 502 page document too.
My reading materials now.
She's a new homeowner in Foster and believes being on the zoning board would be a great way to be part of the Foster community. She graduated from RISD and works at Hasbro as an associate manager of digital assets. So, does anyone from the council have any further questions? I spoke at length with Ms. Inkpen, and it felt very knowledgeable and.
With surveying and I ran our condo board for many years. Which is an interesting condo.
I read her resume and I spoke to her outside briefly. I'm impressed, I'm ready.
You told me where to park, thank you.
I did.
That's a big thing. What is the pleasure of the council?
What is the term for this one? Is this the alternate, this is an
No,
alternate?
this is a permanent, it's full. So then it would be 5 years because it's taking the place of Paula Macho.
All right, expiring
2000, it's 20, so it would be 2025.
December 31st,
Oh,
2020.
yeah.
Okay. I'll make a motion to appoint Zephyr Inkpen to the zoning board position expiring December 31st, 2025.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's not done yet.
Okay.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care, see you soon. Keep the next 3 months open.
We have Recreation Committee appointment. In our packet, you had a letter from Danielle Scott wishing to continue on the Recreation Committee. I did speak to Tammy, the chair, and she feels that Danielle is a asset to the committee. So what is the pleasure of the council?
I move we reappoint Danielle to her current position.
Second.
I don't know what I would add.
I don't remember, I think it's, I think.
That's a brand new one.
5 years, I thought it was 5 years. It's, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? I'm going to ask for the audience to be quiet so we can all hear. Thank you. Moving on to new business, we have DPW appointment. We had at a previous meeting appointed, thank you. At a previous meeting, we had appointed Mr. Cardillo and Mr. Stone as members of the council to be on the interview committee. We also included Mr. Law, the former DPW director, and Ms. Russ, the treasurer and human resource person, I call you human service. So I'm going to ask Mr. Stone to represent you and give us the...
If I could interject, I'd like to table this till the next meeting as we have received, I believe, 3 new applications in the last day.
Were you aware of that?
I just found out.
What's the pleasure of the council?
I agree.
I would like to table it and set up interviews with the new applicants.
Is that a motion? Oh, yeah, I agree. Second, yeah.
That's what I want to see.
Right, same, so continue the interview committee
Correct.
so that there's some consistency.
The 3 new applicants.
And who seconded? I think Cheryl was. Discussion. I was not aware that we had 3 new applicants, but I'm not on the committee.
When we left on Tuesday, we decided, on Monday, we decided we were moving forward.
That is correct.
Tonight, which is why I didn't.
But as there's no time limit
No, I'm just saying.
on the advertising.
I'm sorry, I can't with 2.
Well, it's until the position's filled, so I assume we need to accept these new applicants.
As far as I'm concerned, we were going to fill it.
We had no time limit on it, so.
I understand that, but the committee had made a decision.
And
Because
I
they
don't
didn't have
believe,
any applications.
I don't believe we need to rush into anything.
Tough time.
Can I ask something, please?
I'm sorry, who's saying that? I saw 2 hands up and a voice, I wasn't sure.
Yeah? I'm Dan
Can you
Lemoy
say
from
your
Barb's
name?
Hill Road.
You're what?
Dan Lemoy from Barb's Hill
Okay.
Road.
I just, the clerk needs to have.
When you put out for a job,
Mhm,
you have an opening date and a closing date.
mhm.
How do you make that wide open and just like let it go? I just need to know that.
Because we had no applicants at first, so we left it open.
We had.
That's not true.
We had only 2.
That, the
But
way.
that's, go ahead, I'm
You
sorry.
have, the way it was posted,
Position remains open until filled.
position remains open
Not
to fill.
indefinite.
And that's not uncommon.
That's not uncommon.
That's not uncommon. I understand, the committee met on Monday, and I did ask Mr. Stone if it should be on the
It's
agenda,
a 3-to-1 vote.
and he said yes, that they had reached a consensus, if you will, and that they were moving forward. This is the first I'm hearing of a change.
Well, I'm Eli Berkowitz on Cucumber Hill Road. I agree with him. I mean, I know it's an open, you leave it open, but at some point you've got to, if you have some
I agree.
applicants already, that's the end. Now, all of a sudden, the last 25 hours, all of a sudden, 2 or 3 or 5 people come in. It's kind of a little odd or strange at that
We can
point.
go ahead with the vote, but I'm gonna vote no,
I am too.
so we're gonna just continue it, so we might as well just go ahead with the new applicants.
I'm not privy of that.
I just learned it now.
But I think you should give him a shot.
I don't know who had their hand, Mr. Rogers, I believe you did, then Ms. Moreau, and then.
I am one of the applicants, and I just heard that there was a vote by the committee, that they had a qualified applicant and voted 3-1 on the committee to move forward as a qualified applicant. I think part of the motion was made to put it out until you found, according to the language, a qualified applicant.
No, it's actually till the position was filled. That's the language.
Doesn't have to be qualified.
No.
Mr. Moreau.
Yes, Mr. Morrow, Central Pike. So until it's filled. So that means that if someone else comes in again today or tomorrow
Correct.
and submits, then you're gonna interview them as well.
Could be the
And if
never
someone
ending
comes
story.
in next Friday, you're gonna interview them as well. Then
Until we appoint.
What if it's a
Well,
month or 6
okay.
months? Or
We're in the
like,
middle of the
when does
winter.
it
Like I
end?
said, if
This
you
is
have to vote
January.
tonight, I'd be happy to vote tonight.
I understand, but this is January.
I understand, and we have
And
a
it's-
qualified person in that position right now.
But we could get some severe storms, and we should have somebody who's not a union member in charge.
Well, the person who is in charge temporarily has over 18 years' experience.
Understandable.
Just because they were on the payroll for 18 years doesn't make them good. I'm sorry. I've done it for 38 years.
That's okay, but let me, hold on, let me answer that, please.
When,
The person in charge now worked under me personally for 3 years,
Okay.
and I know he's qualified to take care of storms. That's all
I
have
just
to
don't
say
want the
about that.
discussion to go any further
That's fine. I just
without
want to make it very
people being
clear.
aware that they're being discussed. Ms. Ryder.
No, I was just gonna say, I always understood that the council was not obligated to appoint someone just because they were a qualified applicant. That you're looking for the best person in all of your minds for that position, and it may not just be qualifications. And considering how many DPW directors we've been through in the past few years, caution might be the best way to go.
I agree.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Can you state your name and address, please, and come closer to the front so we can all hear you?
Can speak loud.
Okay, great.
280 Burgess Road,
Name,
Louis Pezza.
thank you.
A lot of people took time out to come here tonight to see what was going on. So, is this gonna be like it's always been? We come, we miss a meeting, and all of a sudden we got a new person doing it? Just asking. Is that how it's gonna work?
I understand, thank you. I know you're asking, we haven't had a vote yet, so I can't tell you, because I'm one vote. Well, one vote.
All right, I mean, so when everybody doesn't show up, though, the vote will be done and everything will take place?
I take offense to that, sir.
I'm asking you, I didn't make a statement, I'm asking.
I'm going to tell you, it'll be on the agenda, and you can see the agenda.
It's tough to keep coming. I take care of my parents, they're elderly, I took time out tonight to be here for this.
I appreciate that, thank you. Ms. Butler.
I just wanted to reflect back on this same scenario happened when you were trying to appoint somebody to the planning board. That you had people come up, and it wasn't really fair to anybody that was here because you decided last minute to not appoint someone and change kind of the rules of the game. It seems like you're following down that same road again. You can't just keep kicking the can down the road to the next meeting, the next meeting, the next meeting. It happened with the planning board just recently, and I don't know if you remember that, but it put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth.
Thank you. Any further discussion from the council? Yes.
I'd just like to say, there's one person that I know that applied. He's worked for the town for years. I believe he should be given a chance to be interviewed. He's been faithful, he's been a good, whatever anybody else thinks, I just believe he needs a chance to be interviewed. That's my reasoning for waiting.
And I want to
I'm
make a
sorry.
comment that he knew
For 2 months.
the job was posted
For 2 months.
I know
for 2 months.
I know that.
He
Well,
could have
let's take the
applied.
vote. Let's take the vote then. Don't
So-
talk, let's take the vote.
There is a motion on Mr. Cardillo and seconded by Ms. Hors to table the appointment until January 23rd? Or are we going to table it until?
January 23rd.
January
That would give us
23rd.
ample time.
January 23rd. Any further discussion from the council? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. So, that, they left before the vote.
I don't think they,
So, it's 2-2.
so it fails.
It fails. So now, I'll,
I make a motion, we appoint Gordon Rogers as DPW director.
Second.
okay. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No. So,
Lynn's over
we
there
are back
laughing.
to where you wanted to be, Mr.
That's
Cutler.
why I take the vote, you know, that's the problem.
Well, that's okay. We did it and it moves forward.
Does that mean?
So, do you say that there are 3 other applicants? I'm sorry, we need to hear this, because what has happened is that the motion to table the appointment was a 2-2 vote. 2 said yes, 2 said no. That means it doesn't pass, so it ends. So then we went to the motion of appointment. That also did not pass, it was a 2-2 vote. So that does not pass. So that reverts us back to having to look at the 3 applicants that have applied. You said that there are 3 applicants.
We received 2 last night and 1 today.
Last night.
So there are 3 applications.
Or might have been Tuesday night, but after us.
When they found out.
1 second, please. So now we have 3 applications. We have,
Lynn's over there laughing.
I guess we have to ask if the committee would continue. There was an appointment made, or agreed upon at the last meeting of the interview committee. And now, sir, I don't know your name, could you stand?
Larry Daniels. So if we come
And your
back on the
address, please?
59 Halford Pike.
Thank you.
So if we come back on the 23rd and somebody puts in an application that day, we're gonna prolong it again?
Yep.
That's basically what you're saying.
If it's a
Just
valid
wasting everybody's
application.
time.
Here's the thing, we're not wasting everybody's time, we're looking
No,
for
sure
the
you
best. No, we're not, sir.
Absolutely.
We're looking for the
Absolutely.
best applicant. You know what, I'm done. It's done, the vote's been taken, it's too
Yeah, I
bad
know.
if you don't like it, okay?
Joe?
Wow, that's a real nice attitude.
Well, that's my attitude, don't vote for me next time, okay,
Mr.
buddy?
Cardillo?
Oh, believe me, I won't.
That's good for you.
And I'll do everything in my power to make sure you don't
Good
connect.
for you, good for you.
Mr. Cardillo? No.
I'm going there. I am not here to be belittled by anyone, including audience members.
Mr. Cardillo?
I would just like to say.
Yeah, that's right, buddy.
Sir,
Okay.
sir,
I'm gonna
sir,
have
Let's get one thing straight.
I'm
we're not
going to
buddies.
ask this to end. Now, a vote has been taken, we are moving on. So now, we need to interview the 3 applicants that have come in. I'm going to ask Mr. Cardillo, do you still want to be on the interview committee?
No, I do not.
Mr. Stone, do you want to be on the interview committee?
Absolutely.
So now,
We need another council.
we need another council person. Ms. Russ, would you still agree to be on the interview committee?
I have a choice.
Yeah, you do. We can't make you do that, it's not part of your.
I will, just because I that comparison.
Okay.
but I didn't.
Mr. Moore I will speak on his behalf, and yes, he will still do it.
Do what?
Be on the interview
Is
committee.
that a conflict of interest?
Yeah, why would he even be on the committee in the first place?
He quit and he left.
He's not even an employee.
Okay.
Exactly. There were people that were on, Mr. Clarkson was on the interview committee when
We've done that before.
Kelly Russ was on the interview committee, so.
That's fine.
Mr. Clarkin was still working for the town when he did it.
That's true. I don't understand why he's even there.
Mr. Clarkin wasn't going anywhere until we got his replacement.
Exactly.
That's the difference.
That's the big difference.
So you have a non-employee
Making decisions.
on
It was the motion
Interview
that was
committee.
made, they were on the committee.
Whose idea was that?
I don't recall, Mr. Dillon.
Of course not.
I don't think it was mine.
I don't think it was.
I don't think it was mine.
Can we all just get along?
I don't recall.
You must have pulled in. Volunteers.
Mine, he wasn't.
Okay.
Usually that's
Okay,
fine.
so we have Mr. Stone, Ms. Rusk,
I'll reconsider.
and Mr. Cardillo. So we have 3 people on the committee, and I'm sure Mr. Law would not mind not being on the committee.
Could I make a suggestion? Really, this is a, this.
I'm gonna give you 2 minutes.
Why don't you tonight, I think this is legal, you can ask your attorney, to end, to accept all applications at this point.
That's the smartest thing I've ever heard you say. I'll agree to that.
You and your father are both dummies.
All right, Mr. Sabato, please listen. I will make a motion that we end this by accepting applications as of this date.
Second.
Discussion, is that, okay, so we did that. End application. Further discussion from the council? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on now to continuing the, I've got so many scribbles here. We did, no, we haven't, I don't think we voted on, we haven't finished the application. So we have the committee members, and we will continue this to January 3rd, 23rd. January 23rd, and make an appointment. Okay, so, any further discussion on that? Make the appointment for Oh, I thought we were on
agree with that
No,
person.
right, you're gonna agree.
Assuming you can all agree on one
Right,
person.
right.
Start that.
Right, so we're going to make an appointment. The committee will come forward with, and the committee agrees, and it will be done that night. Whether it passes or it doesn't, the appointment will be made. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Come on back. Okay, moving on. We have on our... We'll give you a few minutes to leave. Thank you for coming out, come the 23rd, and let that gentleman know. We'll make an appointment. No, the gentleman that left earlier.
No good deed goes unpunished.
You know what, if somebody wants to step outside.
Okay, I'm going to call it back so that we're all on the same page. And the next item is turbine ordinance. And I have to apologize, I did give that to Mrs. Dillon to put on the agenda. Mr. Estivo did let us know that we needed to add a little more to that. So I'm going to ask that we remove that, table that, so that we can have it correctly on the agenda, and we can move forward with that.
I move we table the turbine ordinance until January 23rd meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All discussion? Did you want to say something?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I noticed, only because you had mentioned on the turbine ordinance, obviously the planning board has that on our agenda
Yes.
next week, but there is a case, Temple, Bethel, Town of East Greenwich.
Point of order. I do not believe discussions allowed on a motion to table according to Robert's rules, the Democratic Rules of Order.
It's not the Roberts, it's that we use the Democratic.
They're both.
Okay.
There's no discussion, it's a motion to table.
What's the problem? I'm not talking about the motion.
You're talking about the turbine, and we're taking it off the agenda, so we can't discuss it.
Yeah, I'm not going to that. Okay, go ahead. I'll speak after you make your vote. Go ahead.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. I'm not quite sure where you're gonna go, because we
Very
might have to
simple,
stop.
very simple. The senator will correct me if I'm wrong. Temple Bethel in the town of East Greenwich is a case law that they weren't specific enough, just to help you out on what you were just saying. They weren't specific enough on the agendas. So you don't get problems.
And that's why we tabled it.
And the attorney would know that on that case law probably, if you've seen that one. But there's a big deal, and it was pretty detailed, but the state came back that it wasn't detailed enough. So I think just one word items on our agenda could cause us a problem.
That's what we've been told that. Thank you.
How did you
And
send it?
we're gonna move on
Public
now
comments for
to the transport van driver job description. And Carol's here for that. Carol, do you wanna say anything?
No, I had forwarded what I drafted to all the town council members so that you could take a look at it, you could make comments, suggestions, edits. It's a work in progress. I had used the format that the personnel manual for the town used, some of the wording I used from them. Some of it I had gleaned from other job descriptions and other discussions. The only thing that I would, just looking at it right now, that I would change, I had a conversation with Ginny Caldwell from the ambulance corps about the CPR, and she did recommend that that be a requirement, not a recommendation. So I would change that, but other than that, I'm just open to suggestions from you folks so that we can move forward. Hopefully we can get this adopted so that I can advertise next month. Timeline to advertise in February, to hire in March, and hopefully hit the ground running in April when the van is supposed to be here. We don't know that for sure, but that's what the timeline is.
I read through it, and that was something that I saw too, recommended. I thought that should be a requirement with seniors. Other than that, I thought the rest of it was great.
I did as well, and I had a question which clarified for me, so I'm good with it as well.
Okay, so, what's the pleasure of the council?
I make a motion to accept her proposal for job description
With
the CPR and first aid certifications from the
required.
Rather.
Second.
Discussion?
Yep. It just, because it's for seniors, and I don't know if they have these for other transport, but do they require, or do they sometimes fit these vans with, you know, the little machines that you have at town hall? Oh,
machines.
whatever there's a special.
The AED.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
there should be
And
an
I,
AED
you
certified.
know, I didn't know if that was kind of standard for a senior van, or?
I don't know.
So I don't recall it being part of the,
Right, I just,
I'm looking past you.
Yeah,
Carol,
I don't think it is.
I
I
went
don't
to Rip
remember-
to,
I don't
I
remember
don't
it being
recall
part of
seeing
it.
it on their van.
That's always something we can add.
Right.
We can add
Right.
that, and it would just go like under the seat, the driver's seat or something,
Not
but we
bad
can
idea.
add that.
With the first aid kit.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we've had a motion, it's been seconded, all in favor?
Can I say-
Aye.
Oh,
I was gonna say, can I ask you another question? Do I also have to get permission from you to advertise? I don't know how that works. Like, does
I
that
would
have to,
think so.
does that have to come from the town council to advertise, so that if you do adopt this, then I have also permission to go ahead and advertise this?
I'll amend the motion. All right, then we'll vote on this and then I'll.
No, you did.
We
Oh,
voted
yeah,
on
so-
that.
all right,
Okay.
okay, so I'll make a motion that, Carol.
It's not on the agenda.
Oh, it doesn't.
So can that get put on the agenda for
January?
For January
Yeah.
23rd? Because then if I can get the permission to do that, then I will have that in paper for February.
I believe we have that.
But I don't think we need to actually come to the next meeting, because we know what it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't come under discussion, action. actually
Yeah,
advertising on it.
Well, you guys need to, yes, vote on it. No, it just says description. It doesn't say
Okay.
hiring,
Advertising,
posting,
all right.
just says description.
Okay, so now we're moving on to, and I did add it to January 23rd.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to
Place cooler one.
the resolution, and Ms. Rogers, you asked for this to be on the agenda?
I did. I spoke with Mike Stenhouse from the Center for Freedom and Prosperity, and this was something he was asking for all communities to consider regarding the new gas tax. We're the first town that actually has it on an agenda, so I'll read it if you want.
Sure.
Okay. So this is a resolution of the Foster Town Council opposing the TCI gas tax and the Transportation and Climate Initiative. The town of Foster adopts a resolution opposing the TCI gas tax and the Transportation and Climate Initiative as follows. Whereas Governor Gina Raimondo is advocating for the state of Rhode Island to join a multi-state compact called the Transportation and Climate Initiative, TCI, a roadmap Rhode Island type regional cap and trade scheme that would impose a carbon tax on gasoline. Enabling legislation is expected in the 2020 General Assembly session. Whereas the TCI gas tax is expected to initially raise the cost of regular and diesel fuel at the pump by 17 cents per gallon on our town's families and businesses, and then gradually increase over the years. Whereas TCI seeks to punish Ocean State motorists for using their autos and vehicles in the normal cost of living their lives or in operating their businesses by making the cost of fuel so expensive that citizens will be forced to drive less often. Whereas for all municipalities like Foster, the TCI gas tax will result in an increased cost for the use of its city and town trucks and vehicles, putting even more upward pressure on local property taxes. Whereas TCI's own memorandum states, even without its proposed gas tax, that the regional greenhouse tax emissions are expected naturally to be reduced by about 20% over the next 10 years due to existing technological innovations and fossil fuel regulations. Whereas the high costs imposed by TCI would only add about another 5% reduction in carbon-based gases, which according to multiple research reports will result in no measurable decline in global temperatures. Whereas by joining the TCI compact, Rhode Island would be ceding its taxing of sovereignty to an out-of-state shadow government comprised of unelected ideologues who would be granted the power to further increase the price of fuel in our state without any approval by our own duly elected officials. And then I don't know why that stopped there, but whereas Rhode Island is already participating in another cap and trade system, carbon tax system on electricity, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is RGGI, which studies have shown to have unnecessarily raised residential and commercial electric bills without any corresponding reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and to have weakened the economies of participating states. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Foster hereby calls on all senators and representatives representing our town, as well as the entire General Assembly, to reject the expected TCI legislation or any other legislation that would force Rhode Islanders to pay artificially increased prices for fuel or energy.
Thank you for reading all that.
I had to go sideways, I don't know why this is sideways on the computer.
What is the pleasure of the council?
Personally, I wanna know more about this. I mean, I take exception to the part where it says it adds only about
Can we have a motion first and then we'll discuss? How's that?
Okay.
So do you wanna make a mo, no, I'm just.
I make a motion to accept it, is that right?
Yeah. Okay.
I'll second it.
Thank you. So now we can discuss, thank you.
It says it would only add about another 5% reduction. 5%, we have to begin somewhere, 5% is something. Do I want an added tax? No, but I wanna know more about this. I don't think this gives me enough to make a sound judgment.
Further discussion. Yes, Mr. May.
I would suggest to the council and only recommend that somebody send a history book to Gina Raimondo so she can read up to the fact that 20,000 years ago, the polar ice caps went down to Delaware, I believe. And there was no one around then with gasoline or any emissions or anything like that, but it shrunk back up mysteriously. And I would like an explanation from Gina. What caused that ice cap to melt? We had global warming, evidently.
Thank you, Mr. May. Mr. Savazio had his hand up.
If you do some work on it for Mr. Wang, it's carbon dioxide. That's a global warming driver, all right? So, I don't want to get into it, but I'm going to mention this. The idea that these towns pay taxes downtown and then send Republicans downtown to stick their fingers in their eye and write recommendations like this doesn't ever help us to get help that we need to settle our problems. Okay, so.
Thank you.
No, I'm not done, all right? The idea that taxes are bad is a fallacy, because California has the 5th highest economy in the world with high taxes. New Jersey has high taxes, and Massachusetts is 20 miles away with high taxes, and the Rhode Island cities and towns on the Massachusetts border, Cumberland has $1 million houses. Burrville is moving ahead because they're on the Massachusetts border. So this initiative in its face is a fallacy.
Thank you. Ms. Inquet.
I'm really a fan of metrics, and I know it says 17 cents a gallon. Is there any idea of how much it would cost the town extra? I mean, is it like a huge increase of $500 a year, or is it like $10,000 a year?
Right.
It just might be something interesting to put in there.
Ms. Ryder.
I think the town has to decide, well, maybe they don't have to decide. But where are we? We're, very eager to embrace solar farms because we get tax money. And yet, we're totally against this because they get tax money. It's the same climate change discussion. It just seems to be what side of the fence you're on.
Thank you. Mr. Sheldon.
By and large, if they're gonna have this 3-state compact to do the taxes, it's gonna follow the state that wants the most money, at least right now it's Connecticut. Right now, we have a large number of people crossing the Connecticut border every day that come into Rhode Island and give us their business. I don't know how much that is, but we have that business. This state goes along with it, we're gonna lose that business. So, it's in the town's best interest to not have it.
Thank you. Mr. Moreau.
Yes, I'm definitely opposed to this. I would rather have you vote in favor.
Excuse me, could we have one conversation going on, Mr. Savazio?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would suggest the council vote in favor of this. The reason being is, where's the 17% gonna go? Into the general fund. It's never gonna go anywhere to help climate change. It's gonna go into the general fund to fill a $200 million deficit that we have, and to give the money away wastefully. That's where it ends up going. If this money was going to climate change, that would be something different. But I mean, the climate's been changing on Earth for millions and millions of years. Global warming, that's been going on for hundreds of thousands of years as well. The thing is, this is just a tax, another money grab by the state of Rhode Island and by other states that are going for it as well. It's an additional money. If this money, if they really wanted to focus on something like this, if this money was being invested into some kind of technology, fine. It's not. It's going directly to the general fund.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers.
Just a correction on that, because it's kind of been talking up at the legislature. This TCI tax does not go into the general fund. The TCI tax is on the wholesaler at the ship-port. All that money is set aside and earmarked in a fixed account that can only be used for bike paths and greenways. It's not gonna fix your roads, it's not gonna help anything like that. It's basically a carbon tax, some people call it a sin tax. The problem with it is, especially people in the rural communities, that money's not gonna come out here, they're gonna put bike paths everywhere else, but we're gonna be disproportionately affected because we don't have public transit out here. RIPTA hasn't come out here in 20 years. So, they will be taxing us, and then it'll be going to the inner cities to help them with their bike paths and their public, because they can use it for public transit, because that reduces the carbon tax. So, I think it's too far ahead of itself. We haven't moved up enough on electric energy and electric cars and everything else to stop taxing us on it. And again, I can't stress enough, it will disproportionately affect the rural communities because we travel much further. We don't have the opportunity to grab a bus, and if we do start getting buses, they're not gonna coincide with our work hours and a schedule. We don't have trains, we don't have none of that out here. So we will be severely hit, and we won't see any benefits from it on the other side.
Okay, thank you. So any further discussion from the council? Hearing none. We have a motion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Okay. It was 3-2. Mr. Stone and Ms. Hawes said no.
Yeah, because they weren't paying on them. The motion was in affirmative, right?
Right.
It was to approve, to approve the resolution
To approve
that
the
is,
resolution.
that is rejecting the tax.
Opposition of it.
I changed my vote.
I thought you were voting for a tax there for a minute.
I understand, Chris.
That's why we all looked at you, Stoney.
I'm sorry. We're good. It's good. It's good. Okay, now we're moving on to the controlled substance and alcohol testing policy. Ms. Russ.
That is a requirement from the trust. They prepared the model policy, I just updated it for us, because we're, the federal government created new legislation. I don't know if it was a direct result of the accident in New Hampshire where there was a CDL driver who took out a bunch of motorcyclists, and they found out that he had many violations in other states. I believe it was a direct result of this. So now they created a federal clearinghouse, and as a result of the federal clearinghouse, we have, me is the employer and the person who has to check up on all of this. We had to, I registered the other day for the federal clearinghouse. All CDL drivers have additional responsibilities, and employers of CDL drivers have additional responsibilities. It's gonna cost us a little bit of money because we have to run records and licenses through periodically, especially for new hires. And this is the new policy that goes along with it, that all of the CDL drivers, our CDL drivers, will have to review and sign.
So there's no motion necessary, this is just
You
for.
have to adopt this.
Oh, we have to adopt, I'll
this
make a
policy.
motion to adopt the new policy from the trust.
Second.
Discussion?
The town shouldn't have to pay the drivers that are CDL
No,
to get this, because the CDL, the senator will know this, a CDL licensed guy has to have a drug test randomly or once a year. So if a guy's gonna maintain his CDL license, he's gonna get tested anyway, and the town shouldn't have to pay to.
we're already
to
in
go
a
get
pool
tested.
for that. We have a random pool that
Okay.
we administer, but there is a fee to run all of these tests through. You have to buy that, and there's a lot to it. So.
All in favor?
Yeah, you don't have.
Or you don't have. Oh, okay, so you don't have.
Right, this one, so I'm like,
Yeah. Okay. For future agenda items, I have, sit with the land trust, a workshop with the planning board, economic development committee, and the charter review committee, the DPW appointment, turbine ordinance moratorium, approve.
The public hearing.
The public hearing, yep, and approve advertisement for the, yeah.
Are you
And-
putting, excuse me, you putting moratorium on the
Wait, that's-
turbines?
Well, that was discussed at the last meeting, we talked about.
Until we get an ordinance.
Until we, right, right, so that's what we were doing.
Okay.
Probably the approved the advertisement for Carol Morrow's, okay? And then the public hearing, and yes,
Harold Chippy, 49 Mount Hazel Road. I talked to you before, I don't know if it's an agenda item, but the private roads, some of the problems we're having on them, we need to come up with a solution on, some of the turnarounds have been blocked off, we
you
can't
did,
turn
I'm
around.
sorry,
I know you discussed it like a year ago, we made
Yeah.
a committee up, but.
Okay. We'll put that back on the agenda too. Thank you. Anything else from the council? Hearing none, I will take a motion to go into executive session. We have